ready to sew. Hi everyone, I'm getting ready to sew these two blocks together. I've got both of them trimmed up and I'm ready to sew them together. So the first thing I'm going to do is match my corners of this one. So I'll look to put it on a pin directly through to where it's completely level and up and down. And so that you can get a good seam, you don't want to pin directly on that line. You want to pin a little to the left, a little behind it, so that you don't distort where your pin's going to be. The next point you're going to want to match up would be this one. And that looks like it's perfect too. So I'm going to add a second pin. I'm going to move this over a little bit because it's not going to match up as we go higher. Okay, so now I'm going to match this point. This would be the next point that you want to make sure that you're matching. And it's not quite matched up. So I'm going to turn it over. I've got this one, the front side, exactly where I want it. And I'm going to fiddle with the back side until I get it precisely where I want it. So now it is. So you've got to make sure that your pin can go up and down, as straight up and down when you do it. So what I like to do is that these are my three matching points. This corner, and these I want to for sure match. And up here, I'd like it to match as closely as I can get it. So I'm going to move it over and put a pin up here. Make sure that these corners are matching. Whoop, lost the pin. Oh, here, I can use this one right here. Make sure that I can get these corners matched up. And they are matched up. So I'm going to put a pin over here to the side. So first thing I'm going to do, because I don't have the line pinned, is I'm going to make my stitch a very wide stitch, the widest I can make it. And this is a 4.0. And I am just going to run a quick line of basting stitch right over my seam line so I can double check to make sure that I've got it precisely where I want it, because it's much easier to take out a basting stitch than it is a stitch all the way to the end of this seam. Okay, so I've basted directly onto the stitching line, as you can see here. I've basted directly onto the stitching line. I'm going to remove my pins and I'm going to open up my block to see if I've got it matched perfectly. And these match up perfectly. This matches up precisely. And this matches up good. So now if it didn't, what I would do at this point would be to cut this and remove whatever stitching was not correct. So I could remove the top stitching if this wasn't in the right place. I could remove this stitching and get this in the right place, or remove this stitching to get this in the right place. Anytime I'm doing a small or complicated block, I always stay stitch it to make sure that I've got everything lined up. I remove the pins and then I go back to stitching it, because then I know it's correct and I can just come back, clip and pull the stay stitching out, and I know that my lines are not distorted by pins. So now what I'll do is I'll take my stitch length back down to the 1.5 that I'm using to stitch this. I'll put it back under the presser foot and stitch directly down the stitching line again. And so I'm pretty confident when I get this all stitched up that it's going to be in perfect alignment, because I've stay stitched it and got our base stitched it, so that I know that it's exactly where I want it to be. So anytime I'm doing a complicated piece and I don't want to take out a lot of sewing, I will go ahead and baste it in pieces first, baste little pieces of it together, check how my sewings go, again, how lining up is going, and then I will sew the final line, because basting is much easier to take out. And if you decide you're going to leave the threads in, you can. It doesn't hurt anything at all. But they're very easy to remove once you've sewn your line in. You can just basically cut and pull those out of the way. I'll remove this one up here. And then we'll open this up and take a look at the seam. You could have removed the paper at this point if you would like to. So you can see that that's exactly on point, that's on point, and this is on point too. So we have all of our points lined up perfectly along this seam. So I'll take it to the ironing board, iron it flat, so that I can join the two pieces together, the top and the bottom. And again, I would do it exactly the way, you can look at that, I would do it exactly the way I did the other one before, where I matched my areas that I really wanted to have matched up well. The other thing I've done is pressed one of these to the left and one of these to the right. That's called nested seams, so that you can nest these two seams right up there together, so that you get a nice tight fit. And it will make it less bulky when you are sewing it down. But again, we're going to stitch it first. We're going to stay stitch it together so that we don't actually have to pin right there on our sewing line. We can pin away from our sewing line so we don't distort anything. Let's see how this matches up. So again, I'm going to match the places that I want to make sure match, and that matches perfectly. I'm going to match this. You can tell this one is not in the right place yet. This to here. Yep, right there. Gonna match all the way to this end with this. Again, this is what you have to be careful of, is that both these fabrics are pulled to the end because there's nothing holding them in place, because they have not been stitched on the ends at all. This looks good. So with paper piecing, it is pretty precise. So you get some really good, crisp, you're able to get some really good crisp points, and matching becomes easier because it is precisely sewn to match up. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is a little bit of stay stitching or basting to make sure that I have everything in the right place, and then I will come back and check it and begin to sew these seams together. So again, I'm going to widen my stitch out to be a basting stitch. Stitch this for a few stitches, move this in, stitch again. All I'm trying to do is make sure that the points that I really want to have matched are matched. So I don't need to sew the whole, I don't want to sew the whole seam up, because then it would make it harder to pull out the stitches that aren't exactly where I want them to be, to move the block one way or the other slightly. But this is going to give me a good idea as to whether or not I've got everything matched up. And this one down here, yeah, you see, I'm definitely not matched up on this end down here. So I'm going to take that out right now and try again. So this must have gotten unaligned somehow at some point. Take the pin out. Move this over. I'm actually just going to hold it in place because I've got a pretty nice tight grip on it. Let's see if this is going to be. So what I'm looking for when I'm stay stitching is that I'm stitching on the seam line right here, and then on the back side it's stitched on the seam line. So this is slightly to the left of it again, but let's see how this comes out. Let's see if we have a go or if we need to start over. So that's the one nice thing about stay stitching, is that I've just got a little bit of to clip and pull if it isn't precise, and I haven't sewn it completely together so that I have to rip out a ton of placement. So you can see that this does not line up as well as I would like it right there. This one does, that does, this side not so much. So you can see that I was not on the sewing line there. So I'm going to take the, this was the back side. So it must have just pulled slightly to the wrong direction, and I didn't realize it when I was pinning it. So I am going to take the stay stitching out, move this just slightly, check it again with a pin by putting the pin in the corner, poking it all the way through straight, and see it still is not matched up on the back side. You can see that I'm slightly off still. So what I need to do is move this to where I'm precisely in that corner right there, and then straighten this to where the pin is up and down and pin a little bit away from it. Let's see if I can get that one done for this too. Again, stick that pin precisely in the corner. See that I'm precisely on the other side, and I am. I'm gonna pin just a little further back from that. Take out this stay stitching down here, because obviously this is not in the right spot either then. And move this way so that I can get these matched up. So I've got half the block precisely where I wanted it to be, and the other half is not quite where I want it to be yet. So I'm just working on the half that is not correct yet for exactly where I want it to be, so that it's precise. Okay, got that where I want it to be. Gonna pin through that. This is the only problem with this paper, is it's very thick, and a lot of times you'll pin your finger. I have a little blood on this paper because I've pinned myself a couple times. This center section I am gonna sew completely through because I want it to be precisely where I want it. Okay, so now I've laid this down here flat again to try and get it in the right spot. Got it. Again, this one. Let's see how I did. So you can tell by the front and the back of where your sewing line is as to whether or not you're on the right line. It does look like this time that we caught it in the right spots. Let's see when we open it up what it looks like. The center's perfect. Oh, we got that one there, got that one there, that one, that one. So now we're ready to sew our line. So now we're gonna take the machine back down to 1.5 stitch length. And you could at this point have taken off the paper if you don't want to sew with the paper. I personally like to keep it on until I get the block completely done. Once I have this block completely done, I will probably take most of the paper off because I'll have it precisely sewn and exactly the way I want it. We are going to sew this together in rows, but it is fine to sew these first couple of pieces together. I like to get this first piece together so that I have something I feel accomplished in. So the rest of the pieces will build onto this. Half of them will build onto it. We'll build it in 3 rows. And so we will have all of it sewn together by the time we finish. So I'm almost done sewing this. I'm taking it slow because I want it to be, I don't want to have to rip it out and it not be precise the way I want it. Again, the stay stitching is keeping it in line, so I don't have to pin it at this point, and so there's no distortion to the block as I'm sewing along. So got that. Oh, I ran out of bobbin thread. Uh-oh, now I'm gonna have to run another bobbin. Sorry about that, guys. Hey everybody, it's Margot here from My Favorite Quilt Store. It's another day because yesterday we had a couple of problems. We got the whole thing sewn and we realized we ran out of bobbin. We wound a new bobbin and it didn't go well. So I've got a new bobbin wound again, and it's a new day. As you can tell, I'm wearing a new dress and we're hoping that it does better. 3rd time's the charm. So I've got it already stay stitched where I want it to be, so that's why I can't take it apart. But we have about this much left to sew. That's how much we didn't have bobbin for yesterday. So I'm gonna put it back under the foot here and finish sewing the last of my seam. we have it stay stitched, not pinned, so we want to make sure that we keep everything right on top of each other so that we can get a good, you know what I didn't do today though is turn my stitch length down. I can tell it's stitching awful far, so got my stitch length turned down, and I'm finishing up this seam, and then we'll make sure it's perfect, which it should be. All right, let's see how it all came out. All right, so we've got a perfect seam on all sides. They match together perfectly in the center. So we're ready to iron this down. So all we got left to do is press this seam down, and I am going to press all of it to one side as I press this down so that I can get, when I go to sew the next piece on, I've got it already ironed to one side so I can do a nice nested seam with the next piece that I have to put on here. So at this point, I can remove the paper, and I probably will because I can already feel that it's a little stiff. And so I will definitely remove the paper. You can remove all of it, or if you don't want to remove all of it, you can remove it all to about right out here so that you still have this seam around the edge so you'll know where to sew when you get the next piece on. So this is for me, this is the part that takes quite a bit of time. You just put your finger underneath the paper and tear it off. It's pretty easy to do, but this is also a huge mess. I try not to do it until the maids come in the next day to clean up after me, because it creates a huge mess, or at least you got to get the vacuum out or the broom out to do a little sweeping once you're done. So you just have to go piece by piece. You can also use a pin to kind of get it up a little bit and release that seam a little. But once you get one started, the rest of them are pretty easy to do. So I'm gonna tear it off to about out here to the side so that I have a little less bulk in the center, and then I won't have all this paper to remove at the end when I'm completed my quilt. So the last thing I wanted to let you know that I did, and I'd like you to do too as we go along, is that I, back here on the back wall, I made the 4.5 inch squares, and I started sewing them together. And as I cut the rest of the 4.5 inch squares, I'm gonna go ahead and make my third outer border as I'm going along, so that when I'm ready to sew that together, it's very easy to do. So anyway, I've started the outer border of this 4.5 inch squares also that correspond to this fabric color. So with the next one, I'll add the next round of colors. So I hope this helps you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call, send me an email, figure out how to get posted on Facebook. We'll be happy to answer any questions you have, and I hope you're enjoying this because it sure is pretty and a lot of fun. Happy sewing, guys.